So I'm thrilled to be able to just introduce briefly our two guests here. Mr. Li Chuyuan is the chairman of Guangzhou Pharmaceutical. This is one of the most dynamic, successful, and profitable companies here in Guangdong. And Li Der-Horng, who's from Singapore, who's a specialist in civil engineering and urban planning, and is on leave this year to work with a company that specializes in AI, facial recognition, and is doing all kinds of interesting things associated with urban planning and smart cities that is called PC Tech.
PCI.
PCI Tech, okay, sorry. And so our topic is the Greater Bay Area and innovation and integration in the Greater Bay Area. Most of the people in this audience will be familiar with this term, the Greater Bay Area. I think sometimes for our friends from the San Francisco Bay Area, they get a little bit offended by that term. They say, what are we, the Lesser Bay Area? But the sheer numbers and the scale of what's being contemplated here in Guangdong would suggest that, in fact, San Francisco is very much in danger of becoming the Lesser Bay Area, because what's been planned is for a region that will include 9 cities, 2 special administrative regions, Hong Kong and Macau. It takes in 70 million people. That's the population of the UK and Canada combined. Has a GDP, even though the actual square footage of this area is only 1% of Greater China, the GDP output is about 12%, and it includes many of the richest cities in China. So it's an astonishing undertaking to try to integrate all these areas. And yet, within it, there are still a lot of differences. There are different dialects. There are different transportation systems. In Hong Kong, they drive on a different side of the road than they do here, and lots of different legacy institutions to integrate. So I want to talk a little bit about how to stitch all those things together. Chairman Li, I wonder if we could begin with you, because obviously as a leading company in Guangzhou and Guangdong, you're at the forefront of integrating the region, and I know you've made some very interesting investments in Macau, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about Guangzhou's role in the Greater Bay Area, and specifically your investment in Macau.
Thank you. I'm very thrilled that our Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings is the presenting partner. Actually, it's a kind of a predestiny between us and Fortune, because it's the 3rd consecutive Fortune Global Tech Forum held in Guangzhou. It's also my 3rd time attending the event. Just now, Clay mentioned about the Greater Bay Area. In the worldwide, there are 4 Greater Bay Area. One is in San Francisco, featured in the science and technology. Second one is New York Bay. It's more on the business operation. The third one is Tokyo Bay Area, featuring industry and also city clusters. For our Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay, it's finance, scientific, technology plus industry, so all in one. So for Greater Bay Area has its unique features. For our Greater Bay Area, it's very promising and has a bright future, because a larger size, scale, as you mentioned, the bigger population, very diversified industry resources, Guangdong, Macau, Hong Kong, a lot of policy advantages and strength. In Guangzhou, among the Greater Bay Area, it's fair to say it's the centerpiece, center city. The advantage for Guangzhou is special, unique industries and very sharp culture features. It's Tier 1 city. From the industry point of view, in Guangzhou, in the first 3 quarters, the total GDP reached 1.7899 trillion RMB yuan, enjoyed 6.9% increase. Among the Greater Bay Area is one of the rapidest developed cities. For the 4 Tier 1 cities, it's the number 1 with regard to increase, much higher than the Shenzhen, Shanghai, and Beijing. For our Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings, we can showcase this trend. We are the largest pharmaceutical company in China. It's the largest TCM producer worldwide. From January to September, our revenue exceeded more than 100 billion, and by the end of this year, we would exceed 130 billion RMB yuan. Among all the major Tier 1 cities, we have a lot of comments. Some people would say Shanghai featured Beijing is the whole world. Shanghai is just the second than the heaven sky. But what's the nickname for Guangzhou? Guangzhou is the most livable city. It's very livable and good for startups. More than 2,000 years ago, the Southern Guangzhou Emperor, even 2,000 years ago, he died after age of 103 years old, and he was in the emperor position for 63 years. 103 years old, number 1 emperor, and 67 in the position as the emperor, 67 years, and he passed on his the emperor to the grandson because he outlived his son. So Guangzhou is a longevity city, and the Greater Bay Area is a longevity area. And we should give credits to the health and wholesome habitats, lifestyles, as well as the pharmaceutical industries in the region. In Guangzhou, we have several special features. The first is called the red culture, TCM culture, and innovation culture, creativity culture. So very strong features. It's very suitable for living and for starting up your business. Talking about Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau, Greater Bay Area. Recently, our Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings is planning to relocate our headquarters in Macau. As Clay invited me to talk a little bit more about the Macau, we wanted to establish international headquarters in Macau. We want to promote the diversification of the industries in Macau. It was a call and instruction from President Xi Jinping. It's also our future's development priority for the Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings. The initial investment was 1.5 billion RMB yuan. This is the initial stage. We use this special place as Macau because one country, two systems, there are a lot of favorable policies and institutions. We would use Zhuhai, Hongqin as the industry base and also make full use of Macau's in Portuguese culture and use BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, to further make the Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings going global. and make more contributions to the Greater Bay Area. We all know that Guangzhou, among the Greater Bay Area, we featured also in R&D innovations. Globally, we even have our advantages and very promising potentials. This morning, our mayor also said we have a national level scientific and R&D base. We unveiled this S&T base. This is the only base in this Greater Bay Area. It's a very few such bases even worldwide, which means we have the new technological resources for the pharmaceutical industries. During the tea break, we just released 2 standards. One is international standard for Wang Laoji brand. This is an international standard. The other is the Guangzhou Pharmaceutical Holdings spore oil. In front of you, you can see we have the spore oil products and other diversified products, very popular and being welcomed. You go to every corner of the world. Whenever there's a Chinese, you can find Wang Laoji brand because it's a double happiness and luckiness, something like that.
Right. Well, thank you very much. We certainly can find the Greater Bay Area to be quite an integrated market for Wang Laoji, I think. Professor Li, let me ask you about the infrastructure piece of this, because this is your specialty. I mean, you've had considerable experience in designing and working with urban planning in Singapore, one of the world's great cities. But Singapore is, in many ways, a much more I mean, it's culturally and ethnically diverse, but it's a single city and it doesn't have all these different systems and standards and legacies to integrate. So how would you compare the challenge of creating a Greater Bay Area to the challenge of building Singapore?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think my answer to the large extent already existed in your questions.
Okay.
Yeah, because as we know, Singapore is a city, it's a state, it's an island.
Right.
So it's a country, of course, but Singapore, in terms of its geography, is more unique, it's more unified. But in the Greater Bay Area that we are talking about, obviously we have Guangdong as the province, and we have Macau, we have Hong Kong. So just now you mentioned about the different systems, yeah, and the different jurisdictions, yeah, and the different practice.
Right.
So the moment we are trying to provide, just now in Chairman Lee's his comment or his remarks, actually he pointed two very important things. One is a livable city.
Right.
Another thing is a sustainable city. Mm-hmm. So you are not only here to work, you are also here to have your life. And this life is just not for a short while, it's not just for yourself, but also for your family. This is how we define the sustainability in Singapore, actually. So I think back to your questions, how am I going to compare Singapore and the Greater Bay Area in terms of the overall the city configurations? Obviously, the challenge that we have been facing in Singapore is definitely different than the challenging, therefore the opportunity that the Greater Bay Area is able to enable. Mm-hmm. So yes, we have the different challenges, but I personally would even more prefer to take those challenges as the nutritions, right, as the ingredients to further sustain and prosper Greater Bay Area, to make it into a really international place for the global economy, mm-hmm, and for the different enterprise. And I think just now I mentioned about the livable city and the sustainability. I think nowadays in China, people may not have too much doubt about how to make it as the economically viable place. But the moment we talk about the livable city, or even talking about the sustainability, then people starting to have the question marks flying everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think by looking at the city that we are all currently in, which is Guangzhou, in the past 20 years, I spent all my time in Singapore, and before that I was in Chicago, I was in Los Angeles, I was in Taipei. But if you really want me to compare the Guangzhou as the major leading city in this global area with other international cities, I would say that I personally do not feel much difference. Mm-hmm. I think to the very large extent, we should attribute this to the fairly open economy and the policy incentive. So I think over here, we do have a very good basis to turn this traditionally as an old city, an ancient city, into a future city.
So I guess my question about that is, Guangzhou, I'm up here all the time. It's fantastic. I love coming up here. But I have to admit, it's still kind of a hassle getting back and forth between Hong Kong and Guangzhou, Shenzhen and Guangzhou. And especially when you cross over into Hong Kong or Macau, first of all, the roaming charges are murderous, but the infrastructure, which is impressive, from an urban planning standpoint, still has a lot to be desired, right? You can get on the high-speed rail link. It's 45 minutes to get to Guangzhou, but you end up in South Station rather than
yes.
Where you want to be.
Yes.
So then you've got to get a taxi, and it sort of defeats the purpose. And
exactly.
the Zhuhai Macau Hong Kong Bridge is amazing, 55 kilometers. It's the longest sea crossing using bridging and tunnel technology in the world, and it's a civil engineering miracle. And yet, it still is not performing at anywhere near the traffic levels that it's been designed for. So. What I hear is, that there's a lot of individual greatness in these individual cities, and yet there still is a kind of a stickiness, a kind of detachment to them
yes.
that can't just be overcome by roads and bridges.
Yes, yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you for the questions. I think in the Greater Bay Area, in terms of the infrastructure need to do a lot more. If we want to make this Greater Bay Area, which is something that we all want, okay, to make it into a more coherent, to enable the coherence, to enable the homogeneous rather than the heterogeneous,
right.
we need to go back to the basics,
right.
which is the infrastructure. So infrastructure, many people, they do not enable or do not combine it together too much with the technology. But with the technology, we can change our infrastructure. What kind of infrastructure that we're talking about? In the Greater Bay Area, just now as you mentioned, if we still need to spend that much hassles to travel from Guangzhou to Hong Kong to Macau, and the moment we reach to the train station and we have to face another challenge, which is either by the taxi or by the bus, by the metro, by the other transportation means, then that would defeat the whole purpose. Mm-hmm. So the question is how to enable this coherence in the Greater Bay Area by the infrastructures. The answer could be in the transportation that we've been using every day. In Hong Kong, people use MTR. People in Guangzhou, in Shenzhen, we use metro. We use MRT, mass rapid transit. But many people, they may feel that, are you talking about am I going to ride the metro from Guangzhou to Macau to Hong Kong? Not at this moment, but it will be in the future. So which means in the Greater Bay Area, we want to enable this 1 hour life circle.
Yeah, I see.
So you can quickly travel between the different parts in this Greater Bay Area instead of using the high-speed rail. High-speed rail, as everyone knows, we all receive the benefit. We all enjoy the speedy travel. But the train station is not going to be everywhere. In Guangzhou, you have to go to the south stations, right? but you may have the metro station just around the corner.
Yep.
So how to enable this? The speed is different. So the things that we are doing in Guangzhou is to have the ordinary speed, the normal speed, we combine it with the express service, so that we can have these two different kind of service on the same tracks. So on one hand, we can ride on the benefit of the spreading MRT station at the different parts of the city, therefore in the Greater Bay Area, so that people can travel very quickly. Okay. Yeah. So in the future, very soon in the future, people can travel with the metro from Guangzhou to Zhuhai and further on to Macau. Yeah. So I think in the future, it will be extended into Hong Kong as well.
Chairman Lee, one of the things that will make this work, obviously, is the mobility of talent. And I want to ask you a little bit about, you know, as you build up your international headquarters in Macau, you know, what challenges do you face in education, and can you circulate your personnel easily between Macau and Guangzhou and the other way around? We've got a minute. If you could maybe give us a snapshot.
Okay. This Greater Bay Area, as I mentioned, has a huge potential for further development because there are many benefits. Everybody share the same habit. They like soup, they like 早茶, so to speak, the dim sum for breakfast. They all speak Cantonese. This is a very good foundation. In terms of the talent, this Greater Bay Area is a very inclusive, very open, have local talented people, but also world-class talents are all gathered here. But for Guangzhou City, we have a dense concentration of talented people. A lot of universities, healthcare, we have all the advantages, human talent advantage, which is very obvious, especially in TCM. This Greater Bay Area has two masters of traditional medicine, all in Guangzhou, no in other cities. One is Professor Zhou, another is another professor. They are the only two masters of TCM. This is our advantage. So why we want to internationalize our group? The international headquarters will be placed in Macau. We think Macau is like a bridgehead, internally and domestically and externally easy for us to communicate. In terms of the talented people, it's easy for us. So the talented people in Guangzhou and those in Macau can be combined in an integral way. President Xi of China said he has a positioning about Macau, so he attaches great importance to Macau for city of Guangzhou. So we are good at what our needs. So our master of TCM goes to Macau to offer services. He will be more than happy to do that. He goes to lectures in Macau very often. So this can also help solve the talent issue. I'm very grateful that Fortune, the Global Tech Forum in the past few years, come to be convened in Guangzhou starting in 2017, will be permanently located in Guangzhou. This is a great impetus to the talent people exchanges in Guangzhou, the flow of people can learn each other, also upgrade Guangzhou's technological, scientific, internationalized level, great help to us. So we believe going forward, things will be getting better and better.
In those efforts, and watch keenly to see and await your success. I want to thank both of these experts for helping us to understand a little bit more about the Greater Bay Area's integration. Thank you very much, gentlemen.